What's going on, my broskiis? My name is Toadski, back again, here to bring you guys yet another One Piece Treasure Cruise video. And in today's video, we are going to make a discussion about potentially there being something major about to drop on Treasure Cruise in early September. Now, there is a couple of different key pieces of evidence that could actually point to this being the case. However, this is purely speculation. I don't know necessarily whether anything is going to drop, but with previous evidence of other years, as well as the fact that, you know, things are getting pretty spicy in the One Piece anime right now, I think it's a pretty good chance of them dropping something relatively soon. So let's actually discuss like what's going on here. So let's go over to the main reason why I think a lot of people are saying this is because in past years we do typically have some kind of major SUGO-FEST in September. Also, have a looking at this event schedule right here. You can see this is the typical monthly schedule that we get every single month. However, we don't typically see a massive gap between events. Usually they like to cascade them into each other. However, this one has a big block of 4 days of nothing. So we don't necessarily know why that is the case, and that would actually make it a really good opportunity for them to drop a Blitz battle. So during the 11th anniversary, the Blitz battle you can see here is on the 16th to the 18th of May. Now, another thing is that because of them having to like kind of shoe in this little event with this Blitz battle, with what typically comes with Super SUGO-FESTs, it also means that all of the other events throughout that month get pushed back a little bit. If we have a look at the scheduling for the rest of the events, the treasure map starts on the 17th of September, which is pretty late for a Kizuna Clash, for a treasure map. And then the Kizuna Clash itself starting on the 23rd and ending on the 28th. That is an extremely long time for the end of month events to like end on the 28th. Like, that's ridiculous. That just doesn't actually happen. The Grand Party event, of course, starting on the 5th, ending on the 10th. You have some Assault Rumble before. So what it looks like is after the Assault Rumble ends, it looks like maybe the day after that, or the day, or a couple days after that, is probably when they're going to drop the Blitz battle. And then we'll have a Grand Party, and then move on to the rest of the events. But the fact that they've kind of moved everything along in the timeline and opened up a little 4-day window where there's nothing going to be available, that's a pretty big indicator that something will be dropping during that time period there. Now, going through some of the older releases, this is the Japan Legend release schedule. One thing to note, of course, is that, you know, Japan had always been pretty far ahead of Global, and then eventually they aligned the schedules and we had simultaneous release for everything. However, if you have a look at some of the releases, right? Legend Lucy, which was a massive SUGO-FEST, released in September, and this eventually ended up being Global's anniversary SUGO-FEST. And then it also continued on when we go to so this one right here with Big Mom and Brook. This was like late August, almost in September. This ended up being Global's anniversary SUGO-FEST with the Big Mom, the Brook, and then they also introduced Quick Whitebeard. And then if you have a look at the year after that, in September, we had the release of Quick Kaido, and they released the Dex Kaido, and then Quick Whitebeard released on Japan a little bit later. Of course, we ended up getting Quick Whitebeard with the Big Mom and the Brook, but Kaido, obviously, massive release, releasing in September. This ended up being Global's anniversary SUGO-FEST. Are there any other evidence of this? So this one right here. So in this time period, we had Luffy, Sanji, Germa 66, and also Sweet Commanders, end of August, almost in September, and this ended up being Global's anniversary SUGO-FEST. This actually ended up being a Super SUGO-FEST for Global because Gold Roger had released at that point. This was a simultaneous release, of course. And if we move on over to Global, and we have a look at some other like major releases during September, so this one right here, Super SUGO-FEST, no, it wasn't really a Super SUGO-FEST, but you had the release of Luffy, Sabo, Katakuri, Blackbeard. This was a September release, which was pretty massive. And then we move on over to this one, which was the Final Tap release of Luffy, Law, and Kid. These also released during a September period. So again, there's just a ton of evidence to show that there typically is a major SUGO-FEST in late August/September that will, you know, pretty much lead to the fact that there should be one this year as well. Obviously, for the Film Red SUGO-FEST in 2022, that started in the early August and kind of concluded a little bit like mid-September-ish, but this was a pretty extended period of time for this one. And then the year after that is when we had the release of Gear 5 at the start of August, but extended all the way to the Law and the Kid, as well as the Big Mom, the Kaido, of course, And then September the year after that, what do we have? We had the release of, right, versus Kid and Shanks, because earlier on in, again, early August, you had the release of Luffy versus Kaido, you had Law and Blackbeard, and then eventually ended off with Shanks and Kid. So again, there's just lots of evidence to say that there is probably going to be something major coming very soon. And again, the evidence, the fact that they've pushed a lot of stuff back makes sense. So with all of this being said, what can we potentially see as like an upcoming SUGO-FEST exclusive? Because obviously the One Piece anime has been going pretty crazy, and there is a lot of good things to look forward to. So if you guys don't want to be spoiled on anything like One Piece anime / manga related, then that's fine. But we might discuss some things that are not particularly in the anime thus far. But anyways, one thing that I think could potentially drop is a brand new Bartholomew Kuma. Obviously, this Kuma that you're seeing right here is the Sai Kuma that released earlier this year, right before the 11th anniversary. However, they did just release a new Bonnie for the Kizuna clash that happened recently, and I think it would kind of make sense if they did drop a new Kuma, obviously the one where he is punching Jay Garcia Satin. I think that would make a lot of sense for it to be a Super SUGO-FEST exclusive. I wouldn't be that happy if Kuma ended up being a Super SUGO-FEST exclusive. I'm not that hyped about like a Kuma punching Satin, just because we have so much influx of Bonnie and Kuma related stuff. And just Egghead in general is just like in our faces all the time now. It is getting tiring, so like this wouldn't excite me that much. Of course, if the abilities are really good, I would be really pumped for that, but we'll see, I guess. Something else that could drop again. Remember, I don't want to spoil you guys too much, but Dory and Broggy, they're obviously just, I think in the most recent episode, they were revealed to have arrived on Egghead. So I think this could also be a pretty good chance for them to drop a Super SUGO-FEST exclusive Dory and Broggy, maybe as a dual unit this time. The unit that you're seeing right here, released with Shanks versus Kid, literally a year ago. And this character is like a fake dual unit, so it's 2 units in one. But as a dual unit, I think would make sense, especially with the brand new release of the Frankie that's coming out. His captain ability is like Powerhouse Focus, which does kind of make sense. But also, he gives cooldown to units as well as reducing special switch gauge, and then the Brook gives cooldown and reduces versus gauge. So I wouldn't be opposed to the fact that there could be a dual unit and a versus unit potentially. We will see. If they do like a Satin versus Kuma, that would be kind of strange, but it would also be kind of strange to have 2 Satin legends within a handful of months of each other. You could say the same thing about, you know, Bonnie and Kuma as well, so we'll have to wait and see. Of course, they could also pivot back to Satin, as I said, to release another Satin legend, which would be ridiculous. I really hope that's not the case. But, of course, we are relatively close to the time period where we should be seeing more of the 5 Elders, and that would be best case scenario. I'm not 100% sure how close we are to the other 5 Elders arriving and revealing themselves, but if they end up doing that, that would be obviously amazing, because it gives Satin a lot of support, and we can finally have that fully powered, you know, 5 Elders, Celestial Dragon type team. I think that'd be really, really cool. But of course, these are all just pure speculations. There might not even be a Super SUGO-FEST at all. This is just, you know, just our headcanon right now. Of course, I do think if they do opt to release a Super SUGO-FEST, I do think it's going to be related to the current stuff happening within the One Piece anime. I think that does make a lot of sense. And as I said, I'm kind of over the whole Egghead stuff, just because we have so much of it going on in One Piece right now. I'm so sick of this. I would love for them to give us representation for other arcs in One Piece. You know, give us a whole new Marineford focus batch. Give us, you know, even go back to Fishman Island. I don't know. Give us something crazy. I mean, I want my boy Mr. Slam Jam Katakuri to get a Super SUGO-FEST exclusive at some point. He definitely deserves one. We'll see if that ever happens. But, you know, obviously there's a lot of cool stuff that we could see. But, you know, I think that the whole Egghead stuff, it's just a safe bet for Bandai, because it's the most modern release. You know, it's happening currently in the One Piece anime. People would be excited for current anime releases to be injected into the game immediately. I know back in the day that was something that didn't happen very often, so people were always very excited for stuff like that. But in today's day and age, with how Bandai handle things, whenever something happens in the anime, we almost get it immediately. And just especially with how they did with Wano and now moving into Egghead, it's just, again, an influx of the same stuff over and over again, reskins with different abilities, and it is just very, very boring. So I hope if they do end up doing something as a Super SUGO-FEST for Egghead, it's something refreshing with really, really cool abilities. Anyways, that is going to wrap it up for me though. I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions about this one down below in the comment section. Do you think that we're going to get a Super SUGO-FEST soon? I think there's a pretty good chance for that to be the case. Hopefully you enjoyed this video though, and if you did, make sure to go ahead and leave a like. And if you want to stay up to date with all the content I post, including more One Piece Treasure Cruise content, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below. On that, guys, I'll see you guys within the next video.